What's up, Netflix fans? The Witcher Season 4 is finally here. Let's talk the big recast, whether this show lives up to the hype, and does it have the same magic as it did in like a Season 1? Let's talk about it.
Geralt, you've spent a lifetime battling monsters and men. Your entire being is dedicated to finding someone.
So after the continent-altering events of Season 3, Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri find themselves separated by a raging war and countless enemies, and we're kind of following a couple of different paths in this season. Geralt and his band of misfits, or like the Fellowship of the Ring type thing, where it's a big group instead of focusing as much on the individual characters that we know and love. But obviously, you're here probably wanting to talk about the Liam Hemsworth recasting Henry Cavill, who I was just such a massive fan of in Season 1 specifically. Now we know inevitably it starts going off the rails a little bit, and by the time we got to Season 3, I don't even know, did I review Season 3? I just didn't care as much. And here's my disappointment with it all real quick. Henry Cavill loved the source material of The Witcher, but you hear all these stories coming out about the writers of the show just don't pay as much attention to that and kind of laughing off Henry Cavill and his enthusiasm. And when you have a star that people love so much and is so perfect for the role, in my opinion, and you treat him like that, then really you don't deserve a Henry Cavill, to be honest. Now, that's not to say I'm scoffing at Liam Hemsworth as a performer or in general. I'm obviously more of a fan of Henry Cavill. I'm going to get that off my chest immediately. He is better suited for this role, and I'm really trying to get used to Liam Hemsworth, and I'm still not quite there. Even after watching this whole season, I'm like, yeah, where's Henry?
Where is he?
But I'm not opposed to giving this show a chance. As bad as it was going against Henry Cavill, hopefully he's got some good things going in his career right now that I'm very excited about. We can turn the page and look and see what Liam Hemsworth can offer the role. And again, didn't like it as much, but I don't think he's terrible. At least I don't believe he is the major issue of Season 4. He could be part of the problem for some because of the recast, but we can't really put that on his shoulders. It's not his fault all of that went down. It's more so he's just the guy who takes the mantle. And if you look at it like that, I did start to enjoy his interpretation, his incarnation, playing the same exact character, more and more as these episodes went. And even in Season 1, they're doing a little recap of that romance between he and Yennefer, and you do kind of feel the chemistry and the tension a little more than you're anticipating, not having Henry Cavill there. So that was a nice start to it all. But again, it did take a bit to get used to it. So with the recast, the recharacterization of certain characters, the audience is struggling to get on board with this vision. It's an uphill battle to climb. I will give the show that they had a lot to do to overcome those initial obstacles, but even then, I just believe the storytelling, that specifically, but also the story itself, falls so short compared to what we knew from that first season and parts of that second season, where the storytelling was as integral to the interpretations of the characters, which was as integral to where it ultimately left us off and how it carried the mantle into the second and ultimately disappointing third season, to where going into this season, I'm just thinking, you got to do a lot to get me back on board with these characters. And I'll be honest with you, that first episode, kind of a recap of that relationship with Yennefer, and you get a really cool action scene in the beginning and a few action scenes that are pretty cool. But there is so much that we're having to split our time with this season, and I don't know if anything was nearly as interesting as really any storyline we got in Season 1. And I believe one of the first lines Liam Hemsworth says in this show is, he says, "Not the worst." And that's really how I felt about his version of this character. And that's really how I felt about a few things being set up in the first episode. I'm thinking, I was fearing for the worst. It wasn't quite that. I'm not super excited to binge the rest of this, but I'm at least open to being surprised. And we're hitting all of the beats with this season, this magical war, the power struggle, the action, which admittedly is still just as entertaining, and that's going to keep a lot of people going. And then you've got Yennefer, another character that they start out developing in a somewhat interesting way, but ultimately her story kind of falls by the wayside. And so Geralt being the guy that you would hope would have the best writing of the season, in my opinion, does. But even then, there is this dull factor to what he's going through to make all three major characters that we're following separated, okay, throughout this entire season. I was just going through the motions with the storytelling instead of actually engaging on an endeavor that was just as interesting as anything we saw in the first two seasons. And so Geralt and his crew, once again, there's just as much emphasis on them as there is on the title character. And I'm like, I just don't like them as much. But they're going on what is perceived as a dangerous journey. And I do think they set that up well in the first episode. Whereas on the other side of things, you got Yennefer searching for quote-unquote powerful allies. Whereas Ciri, against Yennefer and Geralt's best efforts, has kind of taken this moniker that's a little more unhinged and violent, and thus that becomes an integral part of the story. Again, a lot of this sounds way more interesting on paper than it does with the way that they execute it, and this could have been something like in the vein of Lord of the Rings. Like, the best fantasy movies and shows show these separate journeys, all of these storylines converging into one seamlessly and providing interesting characteristics, dynamics along the way. But this dialogue just felt like we're going through the motions to get us to somewhere that could get interesting ultimately. But episodes 2, 3, and 4, like, there are definitely moments, and again, the action is still just as good. Liam is not just as good, but he wasn't necessarily the problem here. It's the way that this is cultivated, the way that this is put together, and it doesn't have that storytelling technique used in the first season, and so you're really relying on the writers to take some things with them from the source material, and I'm aware of the source material. I've learned more about it as I went through this series, but what I am gathering from season 4, the more I look into it, this is not very faithful. And it hasn't been faithful as of late, but it feels less so now. And because it is so kind of dull to start with, I'm thinking, why stray so far away from the source material when you had something interesting? You could have just kind of copied and pasted that. Obviously, you want to change it up, do your own thing here, but you're not doing yourself any justice by doing your own thing. And I like a show with some good shock factor. It's why I love Game of Thrones. But Game of Thrones stuck to the source material, obviously until the end. The Witcher, they're just kind of doing things. Big character moments that are either happening in a different way or they're looked over altogether, and then shocking moments like deaths and things that happen to characters where you're just kind of like, well, that's so disappointing. And again, I love shock factor. There's no need for some of this because you have to maintain our interest in some way. And then when you finally start to build something up that's moderately interesting, you do that. It's like, what?
This guy stinks!
I will say, eventually, Ciri's story and everything that happens with the rats and that humanity kind of just disintegrating over time and what they did with her, she was somewhat unrecognizable during portions of these episodes. And I do like that she's, first of all, her character strayed so far away from what they were trying to get out of her. But I do like what they did with her towards the end. And that's something with a little bit of emotional heft and payoff and something that's going to get fans maybe reinvest. Is it too late at that point, though? Maybe you'll get reinvested.
Maybe.
Like some of the new characters here, Skellen, James Purefoy is good. Lawrence Fishburne is always going to add to whatever you throw him in, and his presence was fairly interesting. Again, another character that I wanted and maybe expected more from, but didn't really take away, which was nice. But I do want to reemphasize, before I give you my score, I don't think Liam Hemsworth's inclusion is the issue here. Obviously, he's not as big and muscular, he's more lean and agile, and they're going to take that and kind of include that into his fighting style in this season, which I really like. Again, I love the choreography, I like the monsters, the creature design is great, even some things that are overly CGI, okay, that's absolutely fine, but you've got to give me substance. Without substance, I don't know if you're going to bring me back for Season 5, and Season 5 is where they're going to end it, but I am just not sure if Season 4 did the trick for me. Not without its moments. Again, it's the world of The Witcher. You're going to get some cool things, but I didn't fully love what they did here. So I need your thoughts down below. Are you watching The Witcher? Were you a fan of Seasons 3 or 4? Maybe more so than I was. And I know everyone's going to be hesitant for Liam Hemsworth. I am a Henry Cavill as Geralt guy. Just the best, in my opinion. But I don't want to put it on Liam himself. I put it more on the writing. And from a writing standpoint, that's where the show is struggling right now. I think I'll review Season 5. If you guys want to see it, let me know. Drop a like, leave a comment, and again, tell me, did you enjoy Season 4? All right, bye-bye.